Hi, I am Rebecca Chaplin. I'm the editor of Car Dealer magazine, so thank you for coming along to our social media panel here on the live stage. Social media has changed a lot over the last 10 years, and it's become a critical part of the way people shop, as I'm sure you are all well aware. I've got a fantastic panel coming up next to talk about the virtues and the possibilities on social platforms. Please put your hands together and welcome them to the stage. So to my left, we've got Cheryl Crowley, who is the client partner at Twitter, who you might have caught earlier doing a keynote. Next to her, I can't talk now, it's just all gone wrong. We've got Tom Giaconelli, who is the director at supercar dealership Romans International. And then on the end, we've got Lee Manning, who is the founder and director of Armchair Marketing. Just anything. CEO, CFO.
Tea maker.
Yeah, good. So we've got a panel of social media experts. If you want to ask them anything, please do just raise your hand and we'll try and get a microphone over to you. But I'm going to kick off with some of my own. I want to start with Tom in the middle. So you've just been named our most influential independent dealer on our social media channel.
Thank you for that.
And but you put a lot of effort into your social media channels. Does it really work for you?
Yeah, without a doubt. It's probably our best form of marketing, without a doubt. I mean, it's the stats we can see when we put out posts. We can obviously see the impressions, the reach we're getting, and it's far greater than anything else marketing-wise we're doing.
And you're quite lucky because you've got some nice stock to share.
Yeah.
But you do it across like LinkedIn as well as Facebook, Twitter.
Yeah, we've really put our efforts into 4 different ones, which is Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is the one that not many dealerships are doing, which we really, we put a lot into LinkedIn and we get a massive response, and it's for some reason not many dealerships are on there. So, with all sorts of algorithms, Facebook, it's very hard now to be seen, to get your posts out there organically. But LinkedIn, it's not so congested. So it's, if you take one tip from today, it's get yourself on LinkedIn, get your business on LinkedIn and start putting content out there.
Do you get any people that walk in and say, oh, I saw your car on LinkedIn?
Yeah, we get a lot of direct inquiries from social media. We get people calling up. Before we've even put a car on our website, we put out a social media post and the phone starts ringing saying, I've just seen your post, I've just seen this car on Instagram, tell me more about it. So it's a direct source of inquiries for us, and we do sell cars off the back of it.
I can see Cheryl nodding, impressed. Is that what you want to hear, that people are getting these inquiries?
Yeah, definitely. I'd also maybe add Twitter onto that LinkedIn media plan as well.
Yeah. Good idea. So I just want to jump down to Lee on the end. When did you realise that social media was such an opportunity for car dealerships?
That's a real good question, because essentially it always has been. The growth of social media has, I guess, not really been seen before, exponentially. So I think that particularly in the last 5 years, we've seen social media not just grow as an opportunity to reach people, which essentially is what basically your marketing is, but to a really kind of analytical, scientific way of actually refining your traditional marketing methods. So, usually you've got newspapers and radio and so on and so forth, in which we all have the old adage, 50% of my marketing works. Trouble is, I don't know which 50% it is, and traditional has never really been great for that. But when social media really became an opportunity was when the paid aspects kick in, and you can actually now say, what I'm really interested in is a Ford Focus buyer in Barnsley and nothing else. And the algorithms of a lot of the social media platforms will actually pick out those people and deliver them to your website. So when we've seen the growth of that, essentially, that's where the opportunity has really come in tenfold, maybe more.
So can you explain a little bit for people who don't know kind of what your background is and what your company does, without sounding too salesy, but it's kind of interesting how it's worked.
Yeah. So I work inside the internet, And but previously to working
He
in
told me he was going to do this as well and just come up with stupid answers.
no, but on a serious note, so I used to work for a company called Perry's Motor Sales, one of the national franchise dealer groups. So we were responsible for implementing a really large-scale digital marketing strategy, I guess at the point where a lot of this complicated technical advertising was coming in. We kind of grew vastly, increased inquiries by about 135%, and at the numbers of Perry's, that's really significant. Pretty much grew every single statistic, took a YouTube channel from 790 views to about 2.5 million, and so on and so forth. And then we actually, as a team, created a company called Armchair Marketing, which is over there. And you're all very welcome. And basically, we replicate the same thing. We look after automotive dealers again, and in particular, for all areas of marketing, but in particular, a lot of strategic Facebook, Google, Twitter, LinkedIn advertising, all that sort of stuff.
So social media has grown a lot. I think we can all admit that. But where do you guys see it going? Is it going to continue to grow at this fast rate, or are we going to sort of plateau and we've reached a point where most people who will be on it are on it? Let's start with you, Cheryl.
I think, well, as I mentioned earlier, if anyone was my keynote, Twitter is probably in the strongest place it's been since we started in 2006. And I think one thing you can say about Twitter is, or rather not say about Twitter, is what happens on Twitter stays on Twitter, because you'll no doubt seeing all the kind of the news articles that you read, tweets are often pulled in, journalists rely on it heavily. And I think people are starting to use it more in different ways, and it's really kind of seen as that breaking news platform. And we're also grown our audience massively, actually. We're at our highest ever at 28 million in the UK, according to ComScore, which is fantastic. So we're still growing. We're still very much, we've had 6 consecutive quarters of double-digit growth, which is fantastic, especially as perhaps 2 years ago we were kind of seen as, the headlines weren't great for us. We were seen as kind of a failing platform. Where we're going to be the next MySpace, etc. But the changes that we've made to the platform and really kind of listening to that user feedback have enabled the growth that we've seen. So we're in a great place, and we can only see that, going forward.
Well, I think talking from within the car industry, we have obviously went through this massive growth, and we thought it was going to keep growing, and then everything slowed down. So do you think it will keep growing at this rate?
Well, hopefully. Obviously, it will probably come to kind of, plateau off. But at the moment, as I said, there's still loads of, room for growth in Twitter. We're still, incredibly young. As I said, 12 years old this year. So I still feel like we've got, a long way to go, particularly for Twitter. I obviously can't speak on behalf of the other platforms, but I still think Twitter's still got a lot to do.
What would you say, Tom? Do you have a strategy moving forwards, or does it just work well as it is?
I mean, it's working well as it is, but obviously I think the fact is the whole world is going more and more mobile, and it's making it easier and easier just to constantly check your Twitter feed, check your Instagram, and that just seems to be growing and growing. So as long as people are using their mobile phone more, people are going to use social media more. So for us, that's only a good thing.
Did you say earlier, like 140 times a day people are opening their phone?
110 times a day.
That's quite a lot, but
Yeah.
I can kind of understand it. What would you say, Lee?
I think it's there's a lot of good news and there's a lot of bad news, and that's really typical of the motor industry. It goes in cycles. We're all used to that. I think what's made it especially complicated this time round and a new ground for us. Does anybody know what GDPR is? So I think that's made it exceptionally complicated. There's a lot of confusion around that, and a lot of actions that are typically taking place that some people say you don't need to take that action, but they've taken it. And other people say, oh, you absolutely need to take that action. So where that's really affecting things is that dealers, in some cases, have gathered legitimate data and then have disposed of legitimate data because they don't want to get in trouble. Problem is that, as we all know, from a marketing perspective, it's really basic and easy. It's the more people you reach and show you products, the more likely you are to sell your products. But if the industry is disposing of data, doesn't matter what volume, if they're disposing of data in some way, that has to have some kind of effect. Couple that with the the dreaded Brexit, then you've got a complicated set of conditions. However, the good news is that complicated marketing that you see, if you invest the time or work with somebody who understands it, there are some really basic things in there that regardless of all of these changes and these impacts, you can actually just take business from other people. Because whether business goes up or down, you can still take that business from somebody else. And an example of that, for example, in Facebook advertising, I can tell any of you now that if there's a particular make or a particular model that you're trying to sell over something else, you can conquest those types of customers from your competitors by selecting people who are interested in your competitors' cars and showing them advertising, therefore conquesting them into your own stuff. And if that seems like in any way a waste of money, one of the killer stats in the industry is that actually only 25% of people actually end up purchasing the vehicle that they began the journey on. So, from that perspective, those customers are there for the taking. So there are really basic things that you can do that actually means that you don't really have to go through the same pigs and troughs as everybody else,
And I think whilst we're talking about that, we need to kind of talk about the whole Cambridge Analytica thing, because when you start talking about conquesting people on Facebook and talking to these people that you weren't talking to before, that's not actually something we need to worry about, though, is it?
No, so just so everyone's aware, I'm the kind of guy that you need to avoid if we're at a party and you see me, because I'll start talking about these things like I'm really enthusiastic about it. But actually, in a lot of cases, it's really boring, so apologies if it sends you to sleep. But there's a lot of misconception about what happened with Cambridge Analytica. We've actually seen dealers who are very nervous about Facebook advertising and what the customers will think if they find them on Facebook advertising, for example. Well, firstly, Google do it even worse, but they've managed to avoid this PR scandal for a long time. Secondly, what Cambridge Analytica did, which is conveniently not reported by the media because it's not as good a story, is they actually stole data. So if ever you've used an app on Facebook, before you use that app, it will ask you, are you happy to give up these particular details to the person who created the app? And you either say, yeah, I really want the app, I'm going to do it, or you don't do it and they don't take your data. To all intents and purposes, that's just an exchange, is a value exchange is what we call that. What happened with Cambridge Analytica was that they went in under those ordinary factors, but then created a naughty piece of code that then scanned through all of your friends and took as much data as possible from the profiles of your friends, pulled that data in, aggregated it, and then used it to manipulate a market in the way that they think. So Facebook advertising from a paid perspective is a completely separate thing from that. You have data that is anonymous in a platform that is being sold to you. You don't know who the person is, you don't know what their profiles look like. You're being sold a number of people behaving according to Facebook's algorithms like they're in market to purchase the exact make and model that you want to attract. And what Cambridge Analytica did was just stole that data, saw all the visible profile details, and then tried to influence them negatively. So it's not often understood in the media, but those that can give those forms of advertising a really negative perception, when in actual fact that in a downturn of a market, when you experience a downturn, you can actually use those platforms to counter that downturn.
So, and if anything changes in the future, we do have that on video in case you need it in a deposition or anything like that. You're safe.
Cool.
So, Tom, what works really well for you when you're creating a post?
For us, I mean, we're lucky to have a sexy product in supercars, so it makes it easier, obviously. But we often get told by people that follow us and our customers that we do it very well. And I think it comes down to, first of all, very good imagery. Second of all, a good caption, and keeping it regular. You want to be putting out posts every day. People are on social media every day. You can put an advert in a newspaper, in a magazine. Someone's going to read it once and never again. They're going to check their social media every single day. A lot of people. So if you're there every day with content, whether it's on whichever platform it is, if you're covering all angles, your brand, your dealership, you're going to be seen. And that's what it's about. It's creating that connection with that person. So when it comes to selling their car or buying a car, you want to be the first one that they think of.
And so do you tailor those for every different platform?
We adjust it slightly. Instagram is very much about the quality of the photo for us. Twitter's more about, the news saying what's happening at our dealership, what's come in, what's sold. Facebook's probably somewhere in the middle. But yeah, we do, if you've got the time to do it, I mean, you want to create, a blanket post, but try and just make it slightly subtly different on each channel.
So this was going to be my follow-up question. How long does that actually take you?
We sort of have a meeting at the start of every week and plan for the week. And obviously things happen as the week goes on, but it's a bit of preparation. That's all it takes. And then, just every day. I mean, it doesn't take that long. We have an in-house photographer, so he's just constantly giving us stuff to post. And then all it takes is a few minutes to come up with an idea. So. But
it does sound like it's a kind of whole team thing.
It is. I think the nice thing about it for us is that I'm a director of the business and I'm heavily involved in the social media. I know a lot of companies probably just have someone they employ as a social media manager who's not that, in the business. He doesn't always know what's going on. So the nice thing is to have someone, from a manager, someone high up in the company actually actively involved in it. I think it makes a big difference.
So to all of you, is there a car brand that you think does social media really well? You can have a time to think.
I think they all do it well. That's about resource. But for the people in this room, I think it's about return on investment. Well, all of you marketing has to be about return on investment. There's an element of brand building in there. There is an element of reputation management. But essentially, you don't have to improve your brand reputation and manage your reputation if you don't have a business. So it has to be driven by return on investment. And when you have the pockets of the manufacturer, it's very easy to fund that. However, if you take the lid off a lot of their processes, I think what you'll find is that money is usually the way that they've got to that point. But for us guys, operationally, it's about using the tools, as you were saying. It's about using the tools that are available to you to cost effectively produce content that makes a difference. If you've got a photographer and he's taking pictures of all your cars, well, there's your first content creator. So a lot of dealers are bringing in people, training them to do content creation, which is great. But the reality is that there's already a lot of content creators in your business. For example, ask a specialist. If you want to know a question about a car, you've got plenty of salespeople and they're content creators on Twitter, for example. You'd have every Friday ask the dealers a question about the best way to buy a car, and the salespeople will answer the best way to buy a car. And all of that has to be managed, of course. So you're always faced with an option. Do you want to outsource it and pay somebody big money to get it right? Because getting it right is not that hard. Or do you want to operate it from a point of view where you can actually try and make some money from it? And that involves an integrated campaign. It involves doing organic social media with paid social media. It involves using the resources that you've got, but also having a goal and a purpose to the efforts that you're putting in.
Would you encourage people within your dealership to use their own social profiles to interact with what your business is doing?
I think from a Twitter perspective, definitely. We know that from research that we've run, Twitter is kind of the preferred method now for customers to reach out to companies, and whether that is dealerships. So I definitely think it's good. You can kind of set your tone of voice, but be interactive. It goes definitely back to what Tom said earlier, though, is making sure that if you are going to have a Twitter profile, keeping the content really fresh. There's nothing worse than going to someone's page and the last time they tweeted was last year. It kind of puts you off straight away. So making sure that you've got, that you're tweeting every day. That feed is very fast on Twitter, as I'm sure you're aware. And just making sure you've got that content and using it as a platform to have that conversation with your customers.
Would that be your main piece of advice to people when they're using Twitter? Yeah,
definitely. Don't be afraid to kind of have a bit of character on there, and You know, as Tom again mentioned about the images and stuff like that, you know, really kind of mixing up the tweets that you're sending out, being clear as to what you want the user to do from that tweet. Do you want them to go to a different website? Do you want them to watch a video? You know, do you want them to just to engage with it generally? So I think definitely my piece of advice is just, you know, if you are using Twitter, make sure that content is fresh, that you're regularly, you know, keeping up to date with it, that you're going back to anyone that reaches out through, you know, your handle. You can always take that message or that conversation into your direct messages if you don't want that played out, you know, in your actual profile. So just bear that in mind as well. But I think people, you know, they expect you to have a Twitter profile these days, and they expect to be able to contact you and have a response back pretty swiftly through Twitter.
And we've sort of talked about targeting, but would you say that we should all be thinking about who our customer is all the time and just focusing on that one particular target group, or everyone, all our content should appeal to everyone, to any of you, those?
I think from a Twitter perspective, I mean, if you're doing a paid campaign, definitely think about geo-targeting, so really kind of narrowing your targeting down. Obviously, it's incredibly hard to speak to everybody on the platform, so thinking about clever ways that you can use targeting. Also, you know, making sure it's relevant to the local area that you're in, so if you're taking part in any community activity or anything, making sure you're kind of tweeting about stuff like that. But definitely think about, you know, kind of trying to, rather than going for everyone, maybe try and think a bit more about, as I said, geo-targeting. On Twitter, you're able to go as granular down to postcode targeting, so that might be something to consider.
What would you say, Tom?
I guess I have a long-term vision for our company, so I know, you know, if we put a post out on Instagram, yes, Instagram has a younger demographic, but I'm of the thought that one day, you know, they may be our customers. So I'm okay if we've got 1,000 likes from a load of 15-year-olds or 12-year-olds, because I believe in 10 years' time, 15 years' time, they may well be a customer. So, you know, we obviously think about every post we do, we think about the view from who's reading it, and we try and cater for our customers and our prospects, but, you know, we just put stuff out there and see what sticks, I guess. Yeah, more or less.
Cool. And Lee?
So my belief is that we live in a fabulous time in terms of owning a business, and in particular a business that is heavily driven by demographics and predictable purchase behavior. That's just brilliant time to be in. As a dealer and also as a strategic marketeer, the two work perfectly. But essentially what we're saying is that now, right at this very moment, you can choose a make, model purchaser based on whether they're purchasing a new version or a used version, based on how much they earn. So you can eliminate anybody under £22,000, stop at £55,000 per year. You can include job titles in that, so you might not want anybody outside of managing director. You can geolocate that. You can say, I only want, of all of those people you just showed me, I want people with 2 children that live in a big house or something like that. And the data exists to be able to just literally pick and choose what customer you want. I mean, that is, if that's not the best time to be in a position to be selling cars, you know, the old days, you put it in a paper and hope someone would give you a call. And like now, you're like, no, I don't want that person, I want this person. And you define that. So that is just a fantastic time to be in marketing, you know?
Definitely. So if there are any questions from the audience, we might have time for one. No? Well, thank you, guys. Thank you so much. It's been really interesting.
Thank you.
I was too slow, wasn't I? So up next, we're going to be talking about website design. James is going to be coming up on stage in just under 5 minutes. Thank you.